Welcome to Shift Happens. This week we spoke with Colleen Jaconetti over at Vanguard, and she helped us understand a little bit more about the research that they've been doing at Vanguard for many years with regard to the concept of advisors alpha. This is a concept that says advisors add value, oftentimes in chunky ways, but in ways that you may or may not expect, but don't show up on a statement. The work at Vanguard shows that this research has been quantifying the benefit as being somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3%. And we talked about all the different things that can be done. So when it comes to tying in the ideas in Bullshift, I wanted to make sure that people understand that that a lot of what I talk about in Bullshift is an acceptance of industry orthodoxy 19 times out of 20. I'm a fairly traditional standard advisor and portfolio manager, and my views are mostly traditional on most things. The concern, however, that I want to draw to people's attention that I think oftentimes goes unnoticed is that the advisory services industry is extremely optimistic, to the point of exhibiting what I would call optimism bias, focusing on how things will go well without properly contemplating what might go wrong. Optimism bias is defined as recognizing that bad things happen, but for whatever reason, expecting that they won't happen to you. So people understand that car crashes happen, but they don't expect the car crashes to happen to them. People understand that people get divorced, but they don't expect to get divorced personally. So bad things happen, we acknowledge that. But for whatever reason, we don't think that it'll happen to us, that we're somehow immune. So the role of an advisor in trying to maximize the outcome for their clients, the so-called advisors alpha that Colleen talked about, is a unique one. It's the sort of thing where people need to be able to buy in and actually, first off, you need to be able to actually take the advice that's given. If you can't get anyone to follow your advice, it does you no good whatsoever to be offering good advice. You need to be able to get people to take it. We talked a few months ago with the concept of advice that sticks with Moira Summers, and Moira made that point emphatically. Great advice is all fine and well, but if you can't get people to take it, you may as well not have given any advice whatsoever. So the real rubber hitting the road is being able to work collaboratively, having trust, working with an advisor who you trust, and as the advisor, trusting the client to do what you would recommend being done, so that the outcome is in fact positive, but it's positive with your eyes open. It's not as though you're going to expect a return of 6 or 7% every year with not a lot of variables and not a lot of variance. It's probably more likely that you'll be getting a return of 4.5% or 5% with some high highs that might be getting into double digits and some lows that will almost certainly be negative, and a long-term average that will hopefully get you to where you want to be if you've quantified that properly and accurately and fairly all along. The thing that I would then say to retail investors is that you need to be able to set reasonable expectations to begin with. And don't be willing to work with an advisor who promises you the sun and the stars. It's difficult to coach someone toward proper behavior if your expectations are out of whack with what reality would suggest is coming down the pike. So you've got to be able to make sure that when you're working with an advisor, and the advisor says, I'm sorry, I don't think you can realistically expect a 7.5% rate of return on an 80-20 portfolio or whatever. You need to understand that the advisor is not trying to sell you. In fact, they're just trying to set reasonable expectations. And if an advisor is in fact telling you that you can get 7.5% on an 80-20 portfolio over a long time horizon net of fees, chances are that advisor is engaging in Bullshift and making you feel good and closing the sale because it feels good to be able to think that you can get 7.5% rate of return, even if that expectation is unreasonable. So my point to you this week is be reasonable, set reasonable expectations, and allow your guide, the advisor you're working with, to help you get from A to B by listening and working collaboratively and using trust. We'll talk to you next week.
John DeGuy is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. He is the author of both Bullshift, How Optimism Bias Threatens Your Finances, and Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, protecting yourself from well-intended but oblivious advisors. The books are available online and in bookstores everywhere. The opinions expressed on Bullshift and Shift Happens should not be construed as investment advice. You can reach John at jdegui@designsecurities.ca or at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387.